Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and welcome back to the Faithful Path, where every Saturday I break down the connection between our daily lives and the beautiful religion of Islam, how they both have an impact on each other, and discuss the issues we all have practicing our religion nowadays. So, without further ado, the podcast starts now.
سبيل الدموع سبيل مريح.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Today I want to talk about four powers that we need to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for or develop them every single day. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's names are not just names. We know like the most popular names like Al-Alim, Al-Alim, Al-Kabir, Al-Qawi, etc. The most knowledgeable, the most powerful, the greatest in general. But these are not just names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's His powers. He's the all-powerful, and that's one of His name. And that's why today I want to emphasize on four powers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we need to ask for every single day. Because the reason we're somewhat lost or we can't find a purpose in our lives is because we don't have these four powers. So the first power today is protection. And Allah is Al-Muhayyim. He ensures well-being and protection over His creation. So we need to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for protection of the mind, the body, and the soul. For the mind, we need to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from any negative thoughts, anxiety, depression, hatred, arrogance, envy, jealousy. All these bad things, we need to ask protection from it. We always need to ask protection for our brain, and that we can somehow have a daily cleanup of our minds, of all the haram that we think, all the haram that we see, that we hear, etc. We need to ask protection for our mind because this is our emotional and mental well-being. And now for the body, of course, we need to ask protection from any physical harm or danger in our lives, because this is our physical safety. So every morning or every now and then during the day, we need to ask protection for our physical safety, that our body stays healthy, that we don't put ourselves in some dangerous situations where, Allahu A'lam, we get into a car accident or we get hit by something. This is protection for the body because our body is a ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And for the soul, we need to ask protection from spiritual threats and negative influences. Basically, we need to ask protection from the shaitan, that he don't convince us to do something bad. Because there's a hadith by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He once said, "Be mindful of Allah and Allah will protect you. Be mindful of Allah and you will find Him in front of you. If you ask, then ask Allah alone. And if you seek help, then seek help from Allah alone." So every time we're mindful of our Creator, that means we remind ourselves that if we seek protection from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we're mindful of Him, nothing at all can harm us. Nothing can harm us on the mind, on the body, and on the soul. And being mindful of Allah is also being grateful for Him, that He protects us every single day. He protects our minds from negative thoughts. He protects our body for being healthy from any physical harm or danger. And He protects our souls from the shaitan and negative influences. And when you seek protection, you can also seek protection for your loved ones, for the people around you. You can always pray for the safety and well-being of your family, your friends, your co-workers, your husband, your wife, etc. Because when you love someone, you want them to be safe. So always seek protection for yourself and for the people around you, and also for the community in the world, for the ummah. Seek protection for the nations who are suffering during times of crisis. For example, Palestine. What we see right now on social media, and we've been seeing that for years and years and years, we always need to seek protection for them. Ask Allah to protect them, to keep them safe. But we always need to ask protection from Allah on a daily habit. Now, the second power we need to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for is guidance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Hadi. Al-Hadi means He is the guider. And the guider is the one who gives the perfect guidance. And you guys know at school, when we're stuck with a problem or something, we ask the teacher to guide us, and they help us. Or at work, When sometimes you don't know what to do exactly, or you're dealing with a client, you ask your manager or your coworker to guide you, and they help you. But in life, who do you ask for to guide you in your personal problems, in your personal development, in your successes, in your failures, in the moments where you feel lost, depression, anxiety, when you're all alone? Who do you ask guidance for when you really, really need it? It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's Al-Hadi. He's the one who can give you the perfect guidance. And every single time we pray, we always say, اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Take us on the straight path, the path of those whom you have bestowed your grace, not of those who have incurred your wrath, nor of those who have gone astray. So in our prayers, we always say, "Oh Allah, please guide us on the straight path." But are we actually doing the actions required for Him to guide us? Are we actually asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us every single day? And this is important, to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance when making important life decisions. It's important to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance to align our actions and our moral and ethical principles. It's important to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance when we face some challenges or obstacles, or when we're put in difficult situations and we don't know how to get out of it. It's important to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance when we're personally developing ourselves. If we want to seek personal and spiritual growth, we need to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance. And the last thing, it's important to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance to find our purpose in life, to find clarity in life. You can go ask your family, your parents, your friends for guidance, but the last person you should ask guidance for is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can't ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance and then go to people and ask them, "Oh, what should I do?" Your last option should always be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's if your first option is not Him. Every time you want to seek guidance, just ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Talk to Him about your problems, about your difficulties, about your happiness. Seek guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order for you to walk on the straight path. The third power to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for is strength. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Qawi. He's the one whose strength is unlimited. He doesn't have any weaknesses, any threats. He only has strengths. And I want to start off with a hadith. When Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "A strong believer is better and is more lovable to Allah than a weak believer. And there is good in everyone, but cherish that which gives you benefit in the hereafter. And seek help from Allah and do not lose heart. And if anything in the form of trouble comes to you, don't say, 'If I had not done that, it would not have happened so and so,' but say, 'Allah did that, what He had ordained to do,' and your 'if' opens the gate for the Satan." Asking for strength from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a little bit of mix between protection and guidance. Because asking for strength is also asking for guidance to overcome some life challenges or some hardships. But also asking for strength is asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for inner strength to maintain mental, physical, and emotional strength. And that reminds us of the mind, the body, and the soul. So we need to be strong mentally. Whatsoever the situation we're in, we need to be strong mentally. Nowadays, us men, we're actually soft. We're actually weak mentally. We don't have this inner strength. We sometimes see some adult men that are depressed or anxious about some silly and stupid things. And for physical strength, we need physical strength to handle daily tasks and responsibilities. You can't just ask your Creator to give you strength, but you don't work for it. You don't go to the gym. You don't run. You don't do any sports. You're not working out. You're not lifting anything. If you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for strength, then do the actions required. And asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for spiritual strength is to stay committed to your faith, to your iman, to your practices in Islam. Because the problem now is that we have a low iman. We get influenced by anything around us. Every time someone tells us a little thing, we overthink everything in our life. We need to build our iman. We need to have strength. Like the hadith said, we need to be strong believers. Because a strong believer is more lovable to Allah than a weak believer. A strong Muslim who has a strong iman is more lovable and closer to Allah than a weak believer, than a weak man, than a weak Muslim who has a low iman and a low strength. We also need to be strong to support and uplift the people around us. Because if you're weak, people will look at you weak. But if you're strong, if you're confident, you can influence the people around you. People will look at you and say, oh, he's a strong man. He's a confident man. He's disciplined. He's consistent. And maybe they will look up to you. But we always need to ask strength from the most powerful, from Al-Qawi, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And finally, the last power to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is patience. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is As-Sabur, the one who is most patient and enduring. And nowadays, we're all impatient with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan, including myself first. We're always impatient with His plan for us. That's why sometimes we create our own plan, because we give up on our Creator, on As-Sabur's plan. Every time we're waiting for some results, for some changes, we become impatient. And being impatient also impacts our personal growth. When we develop ourselves, when we have self-discipline, after a couple of weeks, we sometimes fall off. And when we're facing uncertainty, or when we're coping with difficult situations, or we can't decide whether this is right or this is right. All of these aspects, all of these moments, they all relate to patience. Because when we make a decision, the first thing that requires us to achieve this decision is patience. We need to be patient, and we need to have hope towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even when maintaining our faith or maintaining our trust towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we can say that, oh, I trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but your actions says otherwise. You may trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you're not patient with Him. There's this famous ayah in the Quran when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا واستعينوا بالصبر والصلاة إن الله مع الصابرين. O you who believe, seek help through patience and prayer. Surely Allah is with those who are patient. O you who believe. He's talking to us. We're the believers. We believe in Allah. We have trust in Him. Seek help through patience and prayer. Prayer, we all know it. Everyone says prayer can help you build your relationship with Allah and everything. But seek help through patience and prayer. Through patience. Seek help through patience. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for patience. Surely Allah is with those who are patient. Because you can't have everything your way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you when you're patient. Not when you're asking Him a million times. Not when you're rushing, when you're pushing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you what you want. He will give you what you want when you deserve it. When He sees that you're putting the efforts, when you're patient, that you have trust in Him, that you have hope. And sometimes we ask for guidance in our lives, but we don't ask for patience. And that's why we can never be on the straight path. You can't ask for guidance but not patience. Because, for example, if you ask for guidance, you want to walk on the straight path, but you want to get to the end of it as fast as possible. But that's not how it works. The moment you put your foot on the straight path is the moment you need patience. Because everything in life requires patience. Dealing with difficult people requires patience. Achieving your goals requires patience. Being successful requires patience. Being good with your family, with your friends, requires patience. Being good in school, at work, requires patience. But the most important thing, building your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, requires patience. Your personal growth requires patience. And you can't grow yourself, you can't grow self-discipline if you don't ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for patience. So seek help through patience and prayer. And these are the 4 powers to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for every single day. The first one is protection. Ask Allah to be protected from anything around you, on the mind, on the body, and on the soul. The second power is guidance. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance, for Him to guide you in life, in any decision you make. The third power is strength. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for you to be strong, to make you strong, to have a strong iman, a strong mind, a strong body, a strong soul. And finally, the last power to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is patience. Being patient with everything, having hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you what you want. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you liked it, don't forget to like, follow, and share. And I'll see you next week on the Faithful Path. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.